Okay, hi, I'm Katherine Snedaker. Welcome to Casual Conversations. This is a weekly Zoom program, and we are sponsored by IBIA and NAVIS to bring you casual conversations with brain injury professionals and people with a lived experience of brain injury. I'm so excited today to have Ashton Kroner with me, who has become a friend. I think we've only known each other less than a year now, maybe a little more. We have worked on several events together. She has written a chapter for the upcoming Pink Concussions book and is just an all-around great person. So, Ashton, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Catherine, for having me.
Well, I thought we'd start a little bit with what you're doing right now, and then we'll go back and talk about the story of how you got here. So could you share with our audience what you do right now as a professional in the field?
Absolutely. So I actually work as an outreach manager for the Road Home program at Rush University Medical Center in Chicago. In our organization, we are actually made up of, a total of 4 hospitals underneath the Warrior Care Network. And we provide PTSD services for veterans and their families battling the invisible wounds of war. We see veterans nationally. They actually come in to stay with us for 2 weeks for our intensive outpatient program. Again, they're kind of coming from all over, and they are receiving nearly 6 months worth of evidence-based cognitive processing therapy while they're with us. They also are, available for, our substance abuse disorder, training as well, or therapy. They can do our wellness program. We help provide, resources, for whenever they return back home. But the big gamut is that they're receiving almost 6 months worth of therapy during that 2-week time frame. And the veterans that attend our program that complete it, over 50% of them no longer meet the diagnostic criteria for PTSD. So my role in the community is to go and find organizations, nonprofits, for-profit businesses, and to basically share our program, with them in hopes to be able to find veterans and families to participate in our programming. Our veterans that attend our treatment, like I said, they come from all over, but we are based in Illinois. So for Illinois veterans and families, they are eligible for family therapy services, couples counseling, individual counseling for both the veteran and the family member. And we're able to kind of see them, either virtually or in person, kind of at their discretion, due to COVID. Now that 2-week program that's open for for all veterans of any era and discharge status across the nation. So we have two kind of different programs, one for outpatient program, and the other one is for our intensive outpatient program, which is at 2 weeks. So that's kind of what I'm doing now.
And can they come back after that 2 weeks for a second 2 weeks, or is it really just a 2-week program for all to have all of the services?
So we do have veterans that continue with programming for individual therapy. Again, if they're in Illinois, they're also eligible to do a repeat, after 6 months. So while they're with us, they're working on a particular trauma, whether it's military sexual trauma or, designated as combat PTSD. So a single incident that, resulted, from their experience in the military. And so we have had veterans, come and, do repeat services if they need to. Um, but it kind of kind of varies from person to person on what their needs are. Predominantly the majority of our veterans that complete our programming don't come on for a second session, but we do have on occasion.
And is it majority Iraq and Afghanistan era, or are there also Vietnam veterans that take part?
It is the majority is post 9/11 veterans. However, and that makes up about 80% of our clientele. But that other 20% are pre 9/11. Predominantly Vietnam, Gulf War. Those are our two pre 9/11 eras that are tending to show up.
And it's also open for women, true?
It is, yes. So our programming is, is open for all, as long as they've served at least 1 day in service, male, female. It does not matter. We see veterans that have, received other than honorable discharges as well. Really, our mission is to, bridge the gap so everyone can receive mental health care. Unfortunately, not all veterans are eligible for VA services for PTSD. So we want to, bridge that gap and allow them to be able to get to the mental health care that they need.
And how long is the waiting list for somebody that applies and is accepted?
So normally, I mean, they have to go through an intake process, and that usually takes about a month to 45 days, depending on the veteran's ability and, I guess, motivation on moving forward. But we do have openings, pretty consistently. So we have one IOP that's specific for combat 1 month, and then we also have I'm pretty much following right after that one designated for MST. So we get anywhere from 12 to 14 veterans per cohort. So across the month, depending on the holidays, we're seeing anywhere from 24 to 28 veterans for that IOP. Right now, there isn't much of a wait list. They're able to get in pretty quickly. Again, it's just depending on the motivation of the veteran to complete that intake process.
I think that's so important that if you have somebody motivated that starts the work, that they don't have, that they don't have sorry, that threw me off. Did I get thrown off there? No, sorry about
You're
that.
good.
That they, I forgot what I was saying. I can go back in the screen. That if you have, if you have somebody, I can edit, which is good. If you have somebody that's motivated to go into a program in treatment or intensive out treatment, they do the work and then to get to it, and then it's a 9-month waiting list. I think that's great that the way it's set up that they can get services pretty quickly.
Yeah, like I said, I've had veterans that have called me and, within 45 days, 60 days, they're coming into Chicago from wherever they're at in the country to receive mental health treatment. Again, it goes off of, what our openings are. And, given that we're in the holiday season, we're only doing one cohort in November, one in December, to accommodate for nobody wants to come during Christmas. And I don't blame them, but they're eligible for, services, on both, for the combat and for the MST pretty much every month. So again, it's, we take a look at what's happening in the veterans' lives, and if they're not able to make our first opening, then, we can sit there and open up, a second or even third, date for them based on their needs. But we try to get them in as quickly as possible. Motivation when it comes to any, I think, mental health, treatment, it's really easy to kind of put in those barriers. Oh, I've got work, I've got family, obligations, and, it'll start delaying their treatment. So we try to get them in as quickly as possible so they don't lose that motivation.
So there's a reason that you do this work, and there's a history that you have that is pretty amazing. I know your story, and I'd love to have you share so much of the amazing and cool and just incredible things that you've done. And then since this is a brain injury group, we could also focus on the different brain injuries that you've experienced at different times. Do you want to talk about your sort of under 10, where you grew up, and your experience with the horse?
Yes, absolutely. So I grew up in Texas on like a 10-acre farm. We had horses and emus and all sorts of different animals. And so I had been visiting, my parents had split, unfortunately. And so I was visiting my dad, and, I was going horseback riding, just kind of having a good time. And I was out on the trails by myself. And what ended up happening was my horse got spooked, and ended up bucking me off, and I got clipped in the back of the head by my horse, caused me to, black out. I don't know for how long. So again, I was out there by myself, but ended up having to walk back to, the main house where my family was. And unfortunately, I did not get, treatment, pretty much immediately. I had to wait a couple of days until I was back with my mom. And she took me to my pediatrician, where I was diagnosed with a concussion. I had a fairly large laceration on the back of my head that was not able to get stitches at the time because it had been a couple of days and they just didn't think that it would heal right. So, um, I ended up having some more long-term effects with that where, I would have dizzy spells and have headaches and such. So, that was my first concussion that I had. I was just a little kid. I was under the age of, I think it was like 12, 11 or 12 maybe. But I was pretty young when it happened.
And then later on, you're in high school and you're diving. So am I correct that you were
Yes.
12 at the time?
Yeah, so I was on the swimming and diving team. And just like any other, high school kid, I was, busy with all sorts of different after school activities, but I was really proud that I was able to make the diving team. And I was at practice one day and I was actually working on a back summy, which is basically a backflip in the water. And I had clipped my head actually on the back, the diving board, just back behind my ear. And, with the school and their obligations, I was, basically pulled, obviously pulled out of the water. My parents were called. I had to go to the emergency room and get evaluated. That was my first time actually getting a formal diagnosis right then and there. The school did not allow me to get back on the team until I was cleared by a doctor. I had to spend at least 30 days without any symptoms. And me being a knuckleheaded kid, I was sitting there telling them, oh, I was fine. Basically from the very start off, I was like, I don't have any headaches, don't have any issues. And so pretty much right after that 30 days, I was cleared to go back to my activities, which looking back, I kind of wish I had taken it a little bit more seriously, but it is what it is.
And by that point, you had already decided that you wanted a career in the military.
Yes, I did.
Well, how old were you when you decided you wanted to be in the military?
I was 7 years old. I knew as just a young kid that I wanted to join the military. In fact, for Christmas one year, my parents had gotten me one of those old TV VCR headset type things, and I'd stayed up way too late watching television one night. And a commercial came on. It was actually of the Marine Corps commercial of the guy climbing the mountain, getting up at the very top, and I just thought it was a really cool experience. And really, right after that, an Army commercial came on. And it was of the soldiers going through an obstacle course. And being 7 years old, I was like, how cool is it that, grown-ups get paid to run on obstacle courses, so I knew right then and there that I was going to join the military. And talked about it for years and years and years until my mom finally had enough of it and, started paying me an allowance just to stop talking about the military. But it wasn't until my senior year when I started talking to recruiters and, decided to enlist midway through my senior year, and I shipped off to recruit training pretty quickly after that. As soon as I graduated, within just within a few weeks, I was in Paris Island.
And tell us a little bit about your military career.
Yes, so I served from July of 2007 into the end of July of 2015. So I served 8 years active duty. I did pretty much every volunteer opportunity that I could. I wanted to, go on the military expeditionary units, which is the ships with the Navy. And instead, I ended up getting orders to deploy to Iraq. And so we started doing the workups for Iraq instead of going on the MEU like I had originally, hoped to be able to attend. But I ended up, doing quite a few different, activities whenever I was actually in country. And one of them, I was actually working on my, what we call our McMap belt, which for those that have ever done any type of martial arts, that's the Marine Corps version of martial arts. It's a mixed martial arts program. Where I was doing some training, and I ended up getting thrown and had another head concussion at that point. Got dazed whenever I was in actually in Iraq doing that, or actually, sorry, I was in Afghanistan whenever that happened. But while I was in Iraq, I got to volunteer in a program called Lioness, which for those that don't know that, that name, that's actually when female Marines and Army soldiers actually got put with male infantry units, and we were able to go and do ground combat operations, which at that time, military, occupational specialties that were, specific to males, females were not allowed to do. So during that time frame, I was not allowed technically to do that job, but the reason why they needed lionesses was, so we could actually speak to, local Iraqi women. We did the same program out in Afghanistan as well, but we were able to go into their homes and speak with the women. I was actually put off into a kitchen, and I would be speaking to the locals, trying to gather information on basically operations on what was happening, around the city. We were gathering intel, and the males would be separated from us. So it was just a really cool experience. There's not very many of us that got to actually do that, and so I was really fortunate to, kind of experience a different side of the military at the time, what was considered illegal.
How old were you at the time when you were a lioness over in Iraq?
19.
You were 19 years old. Did you turn 19 in Iraq?
I had actually I had just turned 19. No, actually I was 19 turning 20 when I went through that program. So I ended up spending about a year doing a workup for my first deployment, and ended up getting to spend my 20th birthday out in the desert.
And then in between your Iraqi deployment and your Afghanistan appointment, there was an accident during training.
Yeah, so I've had two training accidents. One was that mixed martial arts, and then we actually did a Humvee simulation rollover, which is the big armored vehicles that we would have, and we like to, in the military, we like to train for the worst. And so I participated in a Humvee simulation rollover where they turned us over like 3 or 4 times. And we have all of our battle gear on. So, we had our weapons attached to us, or actually they were rubber rifles. But they, still very similar to, that of an actual M16. And somebody actually that was in the vehicle with me had lost control of their weapon, and I got hit in the side of the face. And the military, if they actually see something like that happening, obviously I had to get pulled from the vehicle. They did a full assessment on me, and like I did whenever I was, in the mixed martial arts program, I was like, no, I'm fine. I don't need anything, was denying pretty much, medical help at that time. The military has a way of trying to make you feel guilty for, seeking care. You don't want to let your brothers and your sisters down. And I felt that would have happened if I had actually admitted that, that I was dazed, and that I was, that I was hurting. But yeah, that was my second and final concussion that I've had, throughout my life.
And at that point, your fear was that concussion would keep you from deploying to Iraq, to Afghanistan, and that's where you really wanted to be. You're pretty close to your deployment at that point.
I was, yeah, no, I was about a month shy. And I've seen people that were, that because we were all doing workup, we were all excited about leaving. To be able to, basically just do our part. I mean, whenever you enlist in the military, especially in the Marine Corps, everybody kind of hopes to be able to go on that deployment. And I really did feel like I was going to be letting my, basically my family down. And so I really did focus in on, just trying to hide the symptoms, of the nausea that I was having, of the headaches, and like the blackness around the eyes, right then at that moment, because the only thing that I was worried about, or that I was more panicky about, was not being able to deploy, which that would have prohibited me from leaving.
So you come back from Afghanistan. You're stationed stateside now. How are you feeling? How is the sort of the combination of your experiences and your head trauma affecting your day-to-day life?
So I didn't realize at the time, I didn't know what PTSD was. I didn't really know what a TBI was. I'd heard the word concussions obviously a few different times, but I didn't really, think that there was any long-term effects of either of that. But the experiences that I had in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, I mean, we did end up losing Marines, in Afghanistan, Iraq. Luckily, we didn't have anything like that. But just the experiences of being in a third world country, and the things that I was asked to do and experience, I did have some times where, I would be short tempered with my husband. I would be, upset with my kids. I had a really hard time dealing with crying babies. All signs and symptoms of, PTSD. And I was experiencing that. And I really did struggle initially coming home. I didn't understand why I wasn't, the normal person that I was. I wanted to be happy and go lucky. And, in fact, I was just, depressed a lot of the times. I was angry and I had no idea why. So the military, had put me on recruiting orders, whenever I'd first gotten back from Afghanistan. So I was able to really focus in on the mission. I let my personal life kind of, more so falter. I wasn't really caring about self-care. I was more focused on getting, future Marines in the door. It was about the mission of, trying to complete the numbers. It was, one of the more intense jobs I think I've ever had. It was probably one of my more difficult ones, at least, because I had to, basically sign, kids up to enlist into the Marine Corps, for 36 months. And so, at that time, I was just so focused on, working that, I would be spending, 90 hours, 100 hours, basically at the office, working, which is, looking back, I mean, it's preposterous. Nobody should be working that much. But that was just kind of the life. And so it wasn't until I actually exited the military and I was like, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm going to be awesome. I'm going to be able to, really get to know my family. Cause at that time, I mean, I'd neglected them for, going on 5 years at that time. So, I started staying at home and I just did not understand why I was not fitting in. I definitely felt like, I couldn't be around my children's like classmates' parents. I couldn't really fit in with them. I was struggling, staying at home with the whole, self isolation, and it was really, really hard on me. To the point where I told my husband, I was like, I can't be a stay at home mom. I lasted a whole 2 months, and I just could not do it. So I started looking for, for work to, kind of, because that was my coping mechanism. Let's just get myself busy and not have to deal with these, thoughts and feelings that I was having. So it was frustrating, because again, I had no idea what was going on with me.
So where did help come in? I mean, you have obviously great drive. You had a great passion to do the work that you did. You did 2 deployments. You at 19 are a lioness doing a job that doesn't even exist on the, on the books in the military. Like, so where does the military come in to help you?
Well, I never went to the VA until I think it was 2019, 2018, 19 is whenever I really started, reaching out for mental health through the government. But I had actually started taking my daughter to a private therapist, because it was, my PTSD was starting to impact the family dynamics. My husband and I were starting to fight. It was impacting my oldest daughter, who's now 17, where she started getting major depression. She was, being not necessarily combative, but she was being argumentative in the household, and it became a safety issue for, for her to be left alone. And so my husband and I decided to take her to a family therapist. And, after sitting down and talking with the therapist, they suggested that, that I could help. And of course I brushed it off and I was like, no, I'm fine. But it wasn't until my daughter started kind of opening up and talking about how, she could be afraid of me, or, she could, be upset, with some of the things that I do and that I said. And I didn't realize that my emotions were impacting her in such a negative way that it was impacting her, her health. And so at that point, I ended up finding a civilian therapist and I tried EMDR, which it didn't work for me. I know it works for some people, but for me, I wasn't receptive to it. And so at that point, I started reaching out to the VA. I went through, one of the programs at Jesse Brown, VA in Chicago. Went through CPT, which is cognitive processing therapy, and I ended up getting a service dog. Became, got on medication, and it really did start helping, with the whole healing. Went through, some portions of family therapy as well. So it kind of got my relationship back on track with my daughter. But I mean, it was a struggle. I thought that, for me, reaching out for mental health care was, a sign of weakness. And, in fact, it wasn't. It's probably the best and strongest thing that I ever did for myself.
What And then did you ever have, what was the connection with brain injuries and the military? Did that figure into any of your discharge or any of the care offered? Or was that just kind of brushed off? And I know that your husband also served, so there was a
Mhm.
comparison there to what he was offered to what you were offered.
Absolutely. So I did get a TBI evaluation finally. And so I do have VA compensation for my TBI. But I was, at the time, whenever I really needed, help for my brain injury, I wasn't getting it. I had asked the VA. I was getting pretty severe headaches where, I would, need to basically lie down in a room. I just could not, I was light sensitive. Sometimes I would get, dizzy by, standing up too quickly, which I was told was actually my blood pressure by my VA doctor. But I mean, for about 2 years, 2, 3 years of me, complaining of constant headaches and, these dizzy spells and everything, they just kind of, kept on pushing me off. My husband, he also served in the Marine Corps as well, and he ended up getting, diagnosed with a TBI as well. And he was pretty much offered everything under the sun at the VA, which was disappointing. I didn't realize that, speech therapy was a possibility, or cranial therapy, which I actually ended up finally, like, more so forcefully requesting through my primary care provider. But it wasn't really until I started, working with you, Catherine, that I realized some of, the things that I probably should be doing or be eligible for whenever it comes to, getting treatment for my TBI. Like I said, my husband was, he was getting care, very, very easily, without really even asking for it. They looked at his charts, and they pretty much immediately got him into speech therapy. They gave him, things to help him out with his day-to-day life, which was nice. But for me, it was kind of just getting brushed off. So I really had to advocate for myself and push hard just to be able to get seen.
Even though you had been, embedded within infantry as a 19-year-old, doing a job of being with, by yourself, separated from the men, getting intel from the women, of Iraq, like all the things you had done, yet you were still seen, and perceived as a woman compared to your husband's experience about getting those services.
Every time that I've gone into the VA, it is predominantly male. I think there is still a struggle in society that women have served in the military too. And so whenever you go into the VA healthcare system, there's some VAs that do phenomenal work, and then there's others that are still lacking. And I think it also depends on the positions that are there. But when I used to go into the VA, I would be asked, pretty inappropriate questions. When I went in for I had actually dislocated my shoulder, and my physician that was there was like, "When was the last time you had a pap smear?" And I was like, "What does that have to do with my shoulder?" But I mean, so it was, like the whole time they were, kind of disregarding my service. They assumed that I had military sexual trauma, not that my PTSD stemmed from combat. So I mean, it was just constant trying to, validate my own service. And so for me, it was easier just to not continue on with my care with the VA. Because I mean, why would you want to go to your healthcare provider and then not believe, what you did in the military? Or sit there and constantly be asking for help when, they're not even going to take you seriously. So for me, it was really, like I said, it was really frustrating, dealing with, that healthcare system just in general. I now have found, a good healthcare provider that's able to, work with me, and they understand what I've been through. They actually take a look at my care. But this has been 6 years after my service that I was able to finally start getting these services, when I should have been eligible for it, the first day that I got out.
And this, so your frustration, and your experience of not being seen for the combat veteran that you were, and the Marine that you are, how does this help you be a better advocate for the position you hold right now with Road Home?
Yeah. So first, I don't assume anybody, and what their traumas could be. As soon as I see somebody really over the age of 18, ask if they've served or, if a family member served, if they come up and talk to me, it's usually because of my veteran experience and kind of what I've done in the military. And so, I'm not, judging anybody on what they've, on what their past experiences are, which has really kind of helped validate a lot of people that have gone through our services, that actually seek care is because they feel that trust. I help build that relationship, right off the bat by saying, hey, I'm a veteran too. If somebody has experienced, trauma that has resulted in PTSD or TBI, it's really nice to be validated right off the bat, and not have to sit there and question them, because that's something that I absolutely hated, having to go through. It's not a fun process.
To have to prove the
Mhm.
scars, the invisible scars that you carry.
I mean, it's hard to talk about it, in general. So if you do bring out, have the courage to go to a facility or go to somebody and say, "Hey, I need help," and then for them to kind of, completely ignore it or, basically say, prove it. It's demoralizing. Here you are basically trying to bare your soul and they're not believing you. So why go back for more? Why would you want to sit there and expose yourself to that?
Yeah, I mean, and in my experience dealing with women in brain injury, I mean, the the basis of 99% of the calls that I take and the emails that I get are women explaining, a trauma that they experience either from a car accident or domestic violence or sports, some event, the brain injury that was diagnosed, and then the symptoms of months to years later, in which, I just believe that they have other things they'd rather do than be making this all up. So I take it at face value and I said, sounds like you have a brain injury. How can we help you find a doctor to believe you? And, I think that just hearing you're not, dumb, stupid, crazy, malingering, lying, and it's such a low bar. It's such a low bar to just have to just see someone and hear someone and believe them and have them make such a difference.
I mean, it makes a world of a difference. I think I would have been a little bit more receptive to getting mental health treatment, at the very beginning, even when I was in the Marine Corps, and I was experiencing, like basically my symptoms of PTSD. I wish my command had really, been educated on what that is, because a lot of them had, frequent deployments. They've had TBIs, they've had a lot of the same experiences that I had. And, it wasn't something that they really knew a lot about. And as such, whenever you say, "Hey, I'm not feeling good," or "I've got these," it's basically any invisible wound, and you start talking about those symptoms, the first thing that kind of goes into their head is, "Oh, you're making it up," when in fact, you're not. So I mean, if I had, or if I had been around people that, one would validate it and two would, sit there and talk about it like it's normal. I think, PTSD, TBI, really any mental health, should be a common thing that we sit there and talk about and accept. Instead, as a society, we tend to ignore it or tend to immediately think somebody is doing something for attention, and that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, Pink Concussions, we as an organization in the last 11 years, we can't offer a brain scan and we can't diagnose and we can't prescribe a medication, but we can do is provide support, connection, community, advocacy, a mission, a purpose. And I see that that has so much value to people, and it's frustrating because I've worked at a couple of concussion clinics, that bring me on and have me do their IT and their website and their social media, and both times I worked for a year and said, now can I provide counseling? And there I said, well, that's not our medical model, like, and it's so frustrating even now to try to say that, a part of TBI should have a social worker to help with the, anxiety, the stress, the life planning, the life coaching aspects that can just help someone, um, you know, uh, manage the process, and it's still a fight. It's still a fight. I just started working as a counselor as part of an overall program that gives college students 12 free sessions for anything. But I'm hoping that that can be sort of advertised to the athletes to have that piece. So if they do have a brain injury, they can add counseling to that. I just, I know it's not a moneymaker, but it's so frustrating because I feel like mental health is such a component of all this.
No, it is. And I know that there's so many different barriers to getting care as well. So on top of, not being recognized or not being able to find that right facility that is, suited for that individual, that individual person, there's the cost associated with getting help. Which makes the program that I work for really unique. We are a nonprofit, and we are philanthropically funded, and so our work in the community is try to basically break down all those barriers to getting care. So there is no out of cost associated with going through our treatment. We do diagnosis of TBI, but our treatment model is focused on PTSD. But we provide resources for organizations that are very similar to ours, so they can, continue on getting care. But across the nation, getting access to, good quality, mental health care, it can be very challenging.
And so your program, now that we've looped all the way around, the program is for veterans of any discharge status that have served at least 1 day of active duty.
Yeah, as long as they've served at least 1 day in the military, they've worn the uniform, then they are eligible for services. We also see active duty, reserve, National Guard as well, but predominantly we are, veteran centric. Like I said, we like to reduce the barriers to care. So I like to sit there and have somebody come to me and it's like, oh, I can't because I'm working, I can't, I'm worried about that loss of income. I can't just drop everything for 2 weeks. And so we partnered with organizations to help offset those costs. We'll pay for, a month of mortgage, rent, utilities, those type of things. So there really is there's no excuse as to why you can't get mental health treatment. We work, endlessly to, make sure that that person, that veteran that comes through our door, that active duty, that service member, whoever it is entirely focused on getting mental health treatment, because unfortunately those outside factors will play into, getting care. I mean, if you're worried about, your bills, or if you're going to have a home to go back to, those are things that, could eliminate somebody from seeking mental health care for a 2-week program. And so we really do work on, making sure that that they have no excuses.
So not only is there no out-of-pocket cost to the veteran, but you will, if needed, be able to supply some of the loss of income bills that would happen if that person came for the 2 weeks and wasn't working to cover their mortgage.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Are there other programs like yours? Is this just incredibly unique?
So as I mentioned earlier, we are part of the Warrior Care Network. So Wounded Warrior Project actually has funded a total of 4 hospitals to do a program similar to ours. Now, the Rush Road Home program is the only one that has, that sees pre 9/11 veterans consistently. The other sites, unfortunately, they are focused more on post 9/11 veterans. But we have home base at Harvard out in Boston, the Mass General. We have Emory, they have a PTSD clinic as well, and then UCLA. So between all 4 of us, we see veterans nationally on getting them care, and they all have access to the same resources. We collaborate together to work on, making sure that we're providing the best service for veterans. We are doing a lot of work within the VAs, at the VISN, so at the, top level. On being an additional resource, for them. So, there are long wait times, unfortunately, to get seen at the VA at times. And so they can refer over to us. And then we refer right back to them, once the veteran completes programming. But, we are, big collaborators, at the Road Home program. We want to be able to share the secret sauce. So there's other organizations out there to be able to get basically get the care to the veterans in their hometown.
That's amazing. Is there any civilian model for somebody that has PTSD, TBI that you've seen, or that is anywhere near like what you're doing?
Not not really, no. I mean, I haven't seen anything that's come across, but I am more focused on the veteran, the veteran community. I know that there's a lot of nonprofits that are out there that have, similar, kind of somewhat models, but usually there is, requirements for like co-pays and insurance and et cetera. I haven't really seen a lot of, programs that have like our model. Again, I mean, I've never heard of anybody that says, we'll pay your mortgage if you come to us and get mental health care. If there's is something out there, I mean, I would love to be able to learn more about it, but, as of right now, no, I haven't heard of anything.
That's amazing. Well, I do want to thank you for your service, and so enjoyed, our friendship and how much you've contributed to Pink Concussions and shown up for virtual events and interviews and submitting to the upcoming book. So, I really appreciate having you on. And if anybody has any questions for Ashton about PTSD, or TBI or the program, you can unmic and ask your question. Kara, do you have any questions? I'm not sure if you're unmiked or not.
Oh, there. Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Ashton. How are you? It's nice to see you.
Good. Nice to see you again.
Thank you for your presentation today. It was so interesting to listen to you and learn more about your story. I had my one question. Well, I have two questions. My one is first one is the PTSD versus TBI. You said PTSD a lot more than you said TBI, and so I am just curious about like the intersection between the two, and not necessarily with you personally, just in terms of like at Rush, with Rush, Road Home, and just in general, how does that, I guess, intersect, or is there treatment, targeted towards some of the cognitive, emotional, neurological, challenges that come with TBI that may be more, directly caused by that as opposed to PTSD?
Yeah, good question. So I think for me at least, again, there like some of the big emotions that I have, can stem from, both my TBI and PTSD. I think a lot of it is intermixed. But a lot of my symptoms of like my TBI personally, are more, in my opinion, they're more headache related or the dizziness. I tend to attribute a lot more of my, my feelings, like my different emotions to PTSD, because that's, something that I've had a lot more treatment with, with the VA and with my civilian provider as well. That's just something I'm more common and comfortable with. The Road Home program, we are a PTSD clinic. We can do TBI diagnosis. However, we usually refer out because, what we've realized with the, with like TBI, it can really impact the PTSD trauma care. Like whenever it comes to like their basic ADLs, if some, some of their TBI symptoms can be a little bit more severe, which, would make it difficult for them to be able to try, process their PTSD trauma. And so we refer that out, to other organizations like the Bush Institute, down in Texas. They have a really good program, which is one of the reasons why we have so many, community partners and resources, both civilian and, veteran, so we can, make sure that if somebody does come through our program and goes through our intake and we realize that maybe their TBI is a little bit more complex than, what our clinic can handle, we can refer them out to make sure that they're still going to get that care.
That's very good, because I know like care navigation, I mean, for both PTSD and TBI, is such a challenge. I mean, so it's great that
I
you do
just,
that.
and I
My
just
other-
want to throw in, just for one second, just throw in that Ann Rasmussen has spoken several times, Dr. Rasmussen, several times at our events. And she talks about the lack of alloprogesterone after a TBI, where a TBI causes your progesterone to drop. And then there's a complex chain of events that I don't understand, but at the end, no progesterone, no alloprogesterone. And alloprogesterone is the hormone that's secreted that really is the sort of the giant hug that sort of helps one, get through trauma. And with the lack of it, her research shows that a TBI can double your chances in the future of PTSD, that the TBI can set you up for a subsequent trauma to have more likely it to be PTSD than had you not had the TBI. So that was my little add-in. So back to your question, Kara.
Thanks, Catherine. That's interesting. My other question was just about like the follow-up care, Ashton, with Road Home. You said it's like an intensive program, very intensive for a couple of weeks. Is there any like long-term treatment or outreach, or what happens once they're done with the program? Or do you just connect them to other services or whatever? I mean, maybe it's just based on an individual.
Yeah, so it depends on where they're located. So we are not allowed to see veterans across state lines for continuation of care. So if they're located, the veteran or the veteran family member is located in Illinois, they're more than welcome to continue on with clinical services at our program. We also offer, like group therapy, art therapy. We have a chaplaincy support program as well to, work on moral injury, which is a whole other topic. But for the veterans that are coming across state lines, we do have, partnerships with other organizations to continue on with follow-up care in their home states. We actually have a VA liaison that comes and meets with the veterans individually one-on-one to find out if, they are connected to care in their hometown through their VA, or if they would be interested in continuing care. And he's able to kind of work through the bureaucracies within the VA healthcare system and get them appointments a lot quicker than if they were to call the appointment line. Veterans that are ineligible for the VA, we work with other community partners to be able to get care within the community. So they're not just going to be left hung out to dry. In fact, we look for, we look for a treatment plan that's going to continue on post-treatment as well. And we also do follow-ups with them as well to kind of track their progress in the months and year leading after, their time with us. And, one of the things that our research department is seeing is that, yes, the veterans that have gone through our program, 50% of them no longer meet diagnostic criteria, but is that sustaining? Is that long-term? And what we're finding out is, yes, it is, as long as they're using the tools that that they were given in treatment. It is a long-term, a long-term success. But those symptoms kind of, they can come back. It's just how effective they are.
I think we saw that with the troops leaving Afghanistan, and how many triggered you were doing national interviews right during that period.
Yeah, no, and I have a couple of other interviews coming out as well. It's nice to hear somebody else that's been there, be able to talk about, their experience, what they've overcome in their past, and that it's okay not to be okay. What's not okay is burying it, not talking, not reaching out for help. And so I use my standing in the community and my own personal experience to basically advocate and let people know that, there are programs out there to be able to get care. I'm a big component of getting help, as soon as you start realizing those symptoms. Because the long lasting effects, or the effects, can be long lasting. Case in point with my daughter, she's still needing care. If I had gotten help, years beforehand, would she be, as severe as she is now? I don't know. But, I would like to sit there and think that, evidence, if I would participate in evidence-based treatment, we had done family therapy, her life as a high school student would have been a lot easier.
I see Deneen Brooks has written a question. I'm just following up actually on what you just said. And she just said, thank you for your share. Can you tell us if there's any programs that, any programs that help children in the family as parents make the healing plan, for themselves?
Yeah, great question. So again, for that 2-week intensive outpatient program, we do provide a 2-day psychoeducation portion where our clinicians will meet with the veterans' family members. It used to be an in-person program. Due to COVID, everything went virtual, and so we're only offering psychoeducation across state lines at this time. But they're able to learn about what PTSD is. learning and understanding stuck points in cognitive processing therapy, and just basically better understanding their veteran in general. Because what we realize, and I am guilty of it, is, after therapy, we don't want to talk about it. We want to be able to kind of just sit and process, and we might, our emotions might be a little raw, and it does bleed over into the family. And so, as the Road Home program has progressed over the years, we've realized that family is an incredibly important component to the healing process. And so that's what we do for the 2-week program that I've been mentioning. But we also do, family and couples counseling as well for anyone that's based in Illinois or the surrounding states that want to come to us. We see kids as young as 5 years old, again, it's how the veteran identifies family. So for us, that means, girlfriend, boyfriend, stepchildren. There does not have to be a blood or marital relation. It's as long as the veteran identifies them as family or somebody that's close to them, they're eligible for services.
I think it's really important. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have it this week is with Veterans Day coming up next week. Anyone on this call, as you reach out to someone that that is a veteran, and really ask, how are you doing? And if somebody is struggling, it's great to know that these kind of programs exist. I think sometimes it's scary to reach out to people that are struggling because, do I want to stir up the pot because I don't even know how to help that person? But I really think that there are programs out there, and it's important every day to reach out to veterans that we know, but especially with next weekend, it will kick up a lot, I think, about the Afghanistan leaving again. And, if we can all, send some love and appreciation to our veterans. And now you have about a really cool program.
Yes, no, absolutely. I will say holidays tend to be pretty difficult on the veteran community, just because, we're thinking about times where, maybe we had somebody that was killed in action. And so there's a little bit of guilt and survivors guilt that kind of goes along with that one. So the holidays are pretty tough, especially, going into, these holidays with with the events that did happen in Afghanistan. So I would encourage, anybody that you may know that has served, in any conflict, to kind of just check in with them. And if you do have a veteran or a family member that could benefit from, services, I can sit there and put in my, the website for my organization, which is the roadhomeprogram.org. If you're interested in kind of learning more about our program and doing more of a formal presentation, we can have a clinician, actually end up doing a formal presentation with your organization and kind of talk about, the signs and symptoms and kind of getting help and kind of what that leads to. But we're here to help. That's basically why I do what I do. I don't want to see another statistic, with somebody that I know.
Well, I think that's so important that you say that too, because I think, and I know with whether it's PTSD or TBI, taking the initiative and the motivation on your own, is really hard to do. So I think outreach is so important. I also just see a question here from Dr. Lisa Kurth.
Yeah, then DJ has her hand up. So Kara, read the question that you'd like to.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. This is one from Dr. Kurth. Does your program address the neuroendocrine disruption symptoms present in TBI? And if so, do you have certain personnel trained in this area?
That's a good question. So I'm not a trained clinician. So that is a little over my head, but if you want to email me there, I just put it in the email chat. I can have one of our clinicians answer that, and I can get back that, get that back to you.
And then DJ, you had a question?
Yes, my question is, could you explain, you mentioned cranial therapy. Could you mention what that was like? And I mean specifically what it was like. And then also, is that for both your TBI and your PTSD, or just one?
Yeah, so cranial therapy it's kind of like getting a head massage, but it's pretty intense. Okay. So but yeah, the person that I went through, she's been, doing this for I think 20 plus years, and so it's basically just shifting the bones in my head to kind of put more of a, relief, like the pressure that's on my brain to help with the headaches, because I was getting them where they were pretty, like I said, I was almost blacking out. So she spends about 30 45 minutes basically giving me a head massage, even putting her fingers at the roof of my mouth, and just trying to shift those bones. And it was a very uncomfortable process. I will say that it did get worse before it got better. And it takes a couple of treatments for it to actually start working. Like I said, the first couple of times, I mean, I was having headaches, more frequently, but I'm glad that I stuck it out because it has helped a lot with the, the headache symptoms.
Thank you. There is an electronic or something, isn't there like an electronic stimulation? Does anyone know what I'm trying to say? I apologize. That does the cranial manipulation, but it's electronic. It's a machine you have to go into the hospital for.
Yeah, so one of my friends actually, she's actually an amputee, and she served in Iraq and Afghanistan as well, and she actually was a part of an IED explosion, and so she has pretty significant, TBI cognitive issues, and so one of the things that resulted from her TBI is she started getting seizures, and so they actually implanted. It's basically like basically electrocuting her brain, but that helps with eliminating those seizures. So she used to get them 4 to 5 times a day, and she gets them now maybe once or twice, every 6 months, which is significantly improved. I personally don't need that, but knowing that there are things out there like that, I know has helped more those severe cases.
Yeah, I think it's important that we just always keep reaching out. And I know I always say this on the show, but what's available today, it'll be different 6 months from now. The topics that were important 5 years ago, have changed to today. It does take 10 to 15 years to get something from a research lab into the doctor's office. But what I hope is shows like this and bringing on top programs and bringing on researchers, we can speed that up. But if we don't reach the people that need those services, I think if you're out there, and whether it's your TBI or whether it's childhood trauma, whether it's military sexual trauma, whether it's combat trauma, abuse, whatever's holding you back from the life that you deserve, it is to reach out. And there are services out there, and connect. So what would be your final message, Ashton, to the group? And I really appreciate you staying an hour with us today.
No, thank you for having me. I guess final words is just to kind of help share the message of, veterans that are, battling any of the invisible wounds of war, and allowing them the ability to kind of share their story, but let them know that there are resources out there like the Road Home program, or through the Warrior Care Network. We are here to, to help as needed. We are a unique program, but we are so focused on veterans and their families and making sure that they're getting help. And I just don't want to see I don't want to hear of another story of somebody getting injured or committing suicide, because they didn't know about our program, and they didn't realize that there is relief, that there are people out there that genuinely truly care about them.
How the rates of suicide in the military have there, with the efforts that have been made thus far, do you know overall, are we saving more people, or is it consistently? I would think COVID didn't help.
Yeah, so I mean, I think everybody knows this, the statistics: 22 veterans a day commit suicide. Those numbers, and the VA did put out some information saying that number had reduced. But they took out the active duty component that's a part of that. Not all states participate in that study. So we actually don't really know what the true number is, but kind of a consensus of the nation, we say that it's 22 a day, which is 22 too many, so I think, and what I've experienced, in my role in the community, a lot of people call me, at their worst, because, they don't know who else to reach out to. I know myself, I've called the Veterans Crisis Line, and, I actually never even, was able to talk to a real person across the state line during COVID, because, they were so overrun with people calling them. They just didn't have enough manpower. And I think a lot of it had to do with, what was happening. I know the events in Afghanistan did not help. While the majority of the veterans that I had served with were kind of in shock about what was happening, we didn't really start seeing the effects of, those actions until later on, where, we've seen people increasing, reaching out for help. Unfortunately, just in my area in Illinois, we've had 3 suicides in the past month and a half, based on what's happening. So, despite what's being said out there, the need is there. We know that, outreach is incredibly important, because you never know who you're going to interact with. One of the veterans that, that I personally know that committed suicide, never would have thought of it. They're always so happy and, always willing to, help somebody out. But unfortunately, they weren't strong enough to be able to reach out and get help. They hit it. So, I think it's important to, talk to people, let them know that you're there for them, even if they look like they are happy and everything. You never know what they're feeling at home.
Yeah, and even if you're not a veteran, I think you can still reach out and be there. And if you've experienced TBI, you know what that isolation is like. So I want to thank you, Ashton, for sharing what a great program it is. I wish it was in every state for military and civilian, and it's a great model. So thank you. We have some really great shows coming up. We'll send those out in the email next week. Everybody have a safe weekend, and again, see what kind of outreach you can do personally on Veterans Day, and share this amazing program. So thank you, Ashton.
Thank you, Katherine. Thank you, everybody, for listening.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.